Alright, here we are. Same place, same clothes, different day. Just recorded on the same day as yesterday's. Listen to that delightful background sound, isn't it great? It's like all the chickens see the shop door open up and they're like, okay, there's our cue. Let's head over to the opening of the shop and squawk our balls off until he comes out and chases us. It's like a game. Huh? Maybe they just want to listen. Little bastards. Alright, let's get right into it, you guys. Mark this one as red. This is titled My Bigfoot Sighting, July 2018. This is sent in May 22. Hello Steve, I'd like to share with you a different kind of Bigfoot sighting back in July 2018. To make some sense of it, I've have to give a little background info, how it came to be. I'm a 62-year-old woman now and have been interested in Bigfoot since I was 14, and my father had piqued my interest. He was from Nanaimo, BC originally and was a hunter back in his day on Vancouver Island. He never had a sighting, but did tell us of his many hunting stories that he and his brother had. Anything to do with Bigfoot stories, and I was hooked at an early age. He played a trick on us once on vacation by making Bigfoot tracks around our motorhome in California. Or did he? Zooming ahead to 2018, 2 weeks prior to my sighting, I was sitting in my apartment in Dartmouth, Nova Scotia, gazing out the window at the beautiful blue sunny sky, and was thinking to myself, will I ever get to see Bigfoot before I die? Years of videos and reading on the subject, and being middle-aged, it was only a mere dream of mine to one day see this being. A little thought had planted a seed, you see, an intention. I never knew it to be possible, but it happened for me quite inadvertently. I'm a nurse and would travel the number 7 highway towards my workplace in Musquedobois Harbor, Nova Scotia. Pronounced Musquedoboit. Okay, I came kind of close. I was an empath, and I've discovered that I can read people very well. This morning I drove the 29-minute drive to this small rural village that is coastal, by the way. There's a small hospital there, and adjacent to that was the Birches Nursing Home. The two shared a rear parking lot where we, the staff, would park. Facing the two buildings was the hospital on the left and the nursing home on the right. To get to the rear parking, you must pass both buildings and drive in on the left of that hospital. Once you pass that hospital's left side, you have to round the 90-degree bend to get to the lot to park. Just off this bend in the road is a dirt road that leads down through a forested area to an old house occupied by a weird old man that sometimes would show up in the parking lot with his dog and scratch up our cars as he peered into our cars. Many cars would get scratched up by his dog when he'd do this. He was a recluse basically, and was just plain weird, and would oftentimes be run off the property with letter warnings as well. Anyways, I'm driving into work that morning, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed from the Tim Hortons coffee, and as I enter the drive to the parking lot, as I'm nearing the 90-degree bend, I see the Bigfoot only 75 yards in on the old man's dirt road. He's standing there, facing the parking lot and helicopter pad through a thin line of trees. He's just standing there, still. He does not look at me. He has to know I'm here, though. By this time, I've taken my foot off the gas pedal and have rolled to a stop. My mind is racing. Can I get to my iPhone that's in my scrubs pocket held in by my seatbelt? No. I don't want to take my eyes off him. I'm literally talking it out in my mind to myself while keeping my eyes on him. I drink him with my eyes. I say to myself, what a fine-looking beast he is. I see his wispy hairs moving gently in the morning sun. This long hair on his long arms, I see it fluttering. He's a brown color with reddish tints. From the side, I can see his profile and his face very well. Face is skin, palish, and his head is conical in shape. No neck that I can see. He's looking more like a man than anything else, only his body hair is thinnish and longish. I feel complete calm now. I'm in this peaceful moment in time, and it feels amazing. I'm getting my wish to see this creature and on this amazing day. I'm still sitting in my car and seeing that this Bigfoot is not your typical robust body type, but rather like a tall, hairy man. Just as quick as I was in that moment, I was out of it. Like a bubble popping, I was made to feel to go now. I know he allowed me to see him, and without making eye contact too. His stare in his stance was directed through that thin tree line towards where I needed to go. A slight fear grew over me as I put my car in drive and went to the parking area. As I drove, I felt intense fear. I backed the car in, stood outside of my car trying to see if I could see him, but I could not. In an almost panic, I got ready to run the distance with my swipe card to the rear door to my place of work. Boy, was I glad that the terminal worked today of all days. Once inside, I peered out again to see if I could see him. I could not. This Bigfoot was essentially close to homes, a water source at the rear bottom of the property, trees for him to get around in. Oftentimes, deer would be present between the buildings and the rear water source. A few miles from the ocean is all. He had food source and water source too. Many sightings of Bigfoot in a community not that far from my workplace, as well as UFOs too. Ship's Harbor seems to be a hotspot for sightings further down the road. About 3 days later, I told my boss about my sighting, and she did not doubt me, as her husband is a true believer in Bigfoot. My reason to tell her was for the safety of others that worked outdoors, mainly the maintenance crew. One of the crew I was able to speak to had corroborated with me and shared his experiences with Bigfoot, which was awesome to hear about. People here do not willingly share their experiences. I'm sharing mine because I feel the need to let others know it's real, very real. Mine speak happened to me. I got what I wished for. 2 years later, I got cancer and treatments done. I'm okay, but one never knows what's around that corner, does one? So for me, I inadvertently set an intention to see Bigfoot, and that's how my story goes. There's an old saying, be careful what you wish for. As for the cancer, it's an odd story too. Went with my 2 teenage daughters to get nose piercings done. Just the two of them were to get them done. The last second I found myself jumping into that chair, and I announced I was getting mine done too. Something prompted me in that moment in time to do that. A couple of years later, I found that piercing saved my life. It would not heal. That piercing found a nose cancer. Is this divine intervention? We live in a complex world, Steve. When something so out of place happens to you, it's for a reason. I'm alive, living life full time now as an RVer in my retirement. Single and thankful for my experience in this life of mine. I thoroughly enjoy the online channel, Steve, and watch you all the time. Just wanted people to know it can happen to you with really nothing but an intention. And that's my story. Katie Stevenson, Aylesford, Nova Scotia. Use my name, I'm fine with that, and location of sighting too. Keep up the great work you do. There is so much for us to learn, Steve. P.S. Years before my Bigfoot sighting, I was out on the country roads in an area very close to my sighting, and on a summer's afternoon I saw in the sky, slowly moving, a cigar-shaped craft, approximately 10 stories above me. Very weird out in that area, Steve. Yeah, very weird in that area. It's actually very weird in every single area, don't you think? Very weird in every area, man. And thanks for sending that in. Absolutely appreciate you taking your time and sending that in. And careful what you wish for. No shit. It almost seems that every single person that realizes they have the skills to manifest, they do. And you can manifest anything, from that home run swing of the bat to that knockout punch in the boxing ring to whatever it is you decide to focus on in your mind. It comes true. It does come true. So you try to keep positive thoughts at all times, right? The not being safe part, and what the owl man mentioned yesterday as the Sasquatch being absolutely terrified of the quote, star people, end quote. From the many diligent, intelligent, stubborn people that I have met along my ride, who are way more informed than I am when it comes to this topic and more, their focus has shifted to that direction when it comes to possibly people going missing, being taken, people being taken and returned. So, and there is overwhelming, ridiculous amounts of evidence pointing to that as being true. So, how coincidental is that? Sasquatch people are deathly scared of those people, and those people take them all the time. Now, do yourself a little bit of sleuthing and try to figure out how many human beings go missing a year globally. And then if you want to take an extra step farther, Google up how many people claim to have been abducted around the globe, right? And then if that scares you, well, you're going to ignore it, right? If that scares you, you're not going to want anything to do with that topic, and you're not even going to go there. But it's not going to stop it from happening, right? Unfortunately. Unfortunately. It all goes right back to humans being scared. Humans being scared. Scared, scared, scared. Scared of the truth. Scared of what's really going on. And there you go. Alright, quick interruption there, but I'm back on track. I got a new one here. There's 2 emails in here sent 3 days apart. Now, the title of the very first title is Warning, even for those who are friendly. Alright, here we go. Hi Steve, please read this because I have a real warning for people who have had what they believe is a good relationship with the forest people. They do not function on the same emotions that we do. They don't process and act on the same things we do. Please be understanding and realize that they are not the same as you. I had a rough experience with people when I was young. Then my parents and I moved out into the Pacific Northwest rainforest. I was about 7. I was enjoying my woodland solitude, or just the lack of bullying that I endured before we relocated. I was an innocent and very hungry for social interaction. My first experience is when I was playing on my rope swing by myself at the edge of the forest. I had a sense of being watched, but was feeling like maybe I could feel a potential friend nearby. I sent a share telling you how one day I had hit my head on the fir tree hard enough that the thunk of my skulls could be heard. I complained loudly and sat there recovering. I had the urge to look to my left. Up the small canyon, I saw a juvenile peeking out from behind a tree. I played peekaboo and laughed, and then Dad hollered so loud that I was both scared and angry. I turned and yelled that we were just playing. I then threw my chest out and did my best scared and angry kitten yell back at him. I think they viewed me with some humor and curiosity from then on. From 7 years old to 14 years old. My parents were cool with me hiking for 8 to 10 hours a day because I had been trained in direction and survival. I was homeschooled and a joyful person, only child. My sixth sense became such a part of me that I thought it was normal. In order to keep this email focused, I'm going to skip all the interaction with my forest people. We did have an understanding that I belonged there too, and I would stand up for it. The warning that I want to give is that I didn't understand their feelings. They had seen me abused by my parents and sometimes growled at them. I had a couple of times when I was shown compassion and support. I had a couple of times when I was shown compassion and support. I didn't discourage them. I would go crying into the woods after being beaten by my parents, and they would make comforting sounds back. Then my parents caught on that there was something going on around us and told me that I could no longer go hiking in the woods. My life. They must have known because they told me that I could have one more time in the woods to say goodbye to my friends. It was the most heartbreaking thing I could ever try to express to anyone. I cried and tried to explain, but just broke down on the forest floor crying. Finally, I walked back to my house heartbroken and sobbing uncontrollably. Not much time went by before I started seeing glimpses of them watching me from the forest. Also, they made themselves much more aware to me by cruising by my sliding glass door, sitting in the large fir tree outside my bedroom, and even when I moved to the second floor to sleep, they were there outside my window. I didn't realize how much they had involved themselves in my welfare. I was very nearly considered one of their clan and ended up leaving home at 15 years old. There might be a large display of, "We own and protect her." All hell was going to break out. One of them even came in our front door unlocked and seeked me out one night while I was crying uncontrollably. He could hear me from outside my upstairs window. That one I was hiding from came upstairs. Came upstairs and sat near where I was hiding, then just left. I asked my parents if it was them, and they became afraid and said they would lock the doors. I left there because I didn't know how to handle an emotional situation that I had helped to create. This is so involved and it would be too long. I do wonder if I went back there, if they would remember me. Well, this is a different one, isn't it? Here's a second email, 3 days later. Yes, I guess that I was adopted. I was a glaring beacon of need and desperation. I'm thinking about writing a book. I have 7 years of coexistence to draw upon. They mostly communicated by thoughts, but I would often respond to them vocally. Odd that I considered that okay. But I was very open to them and accepted that this worked. I can remember that I hadn't slept much the night before and always got up and put food together and tried to leave before my parents woke up so I didn't have to deal with them. By the time I came home, they were happy that I was okay. I only slept at home and was a child of the forest. Then at times I was so tired because I had read all night or was aware of them most of the night. So with a bag packed, I would hike to my nearest happy place and try to catch a nap. Often I would explore further and thought it was still okay and that I owned the human part of the woods. Those young bastards were following me one day and I was used to it. I turned around in the woods as I was approaching an open thicket and growled that I had just walked through the place I wanted to retreat through. What is the problem? I gave up and grumbled into the clearing and told the woods that I was very tired and to leave me the F alone. I then placed sticks in a horizontal semicircle and lay down inside to sleep. They were teenagers and had the backing of their parents. They kept throwing pine cones and sticks. I turned my back to them and grumbled to leave me alone. I was tired. After a while, I confronted them and became emotional and complained that they were annoying me so much. I later realized that this was an open thicket of grass at around 9 a.m. when deer would feed, and I just wasn't in the right place at the right time. This is a regular day in the life of Yvonne and her adoptive Pacific Northwest Rainforest Sasquatch community. All right, Yvonne, that sounds interesting, and obviously you know as well as I do, there's going to be a shit pile of people here that are just going to shake their head and wonder what kind of crap you're on, right? It just goes with the turf. But if you got something you want to add to that, you get 7 years of coexisting, you want to add to that, share it away. Share something that the people can benefit from your experiences and gathering knowledge, all right? But what you say does parallel what one of our other contributors, the Owlman, has sent in too, right? It's sounding familiar to me. Thanks for sending that in. And everybody else, take from it what you will or leave it, right? It's too easy. Don't blow a gasket, otherwise you're just going to scream out to the world that you're emotionally weak as F. Now this next one is a screenshot taken from a comment section somewhere. 2 screenshots sent in to me. But they were cut off, it cuts off the person's name. I don't know why, but let's read this. Summer 95, I worked as an engineering intern for Washington DNR, one of the senior field foresters. I got to work with that summer was turned into the wild ones. He told me of spotting a trackway from a helicopter. Tuned in, not turned in. I got to work that, let me read that one more time. One of the senior field foresters I got to work with that summer was tuned in to the wild ones. He told me of spotting a trackway from a helicopter. It went several hundred yards across a glacier above Darrington, Washington. Why does this sound familiar? The boulder-strewn snow field was overshadowed by a cliff-facing ridge that was riddled with caves. He said they sat the helicopter down, took pictures, and measured the tracks. He said the tracks were real fresh, 20 inches long, and an amazing 6 to 7 feet apart. The stranger part was the tracks stopped and disappeared in the middle of the glacier. Okay, I think we read this. Oh well. I remember thinking that was really effing strange, and it spooked me because I hero worship this guy. We totally did read this, and I asked the guy to try to get hold of him, and I believe he emailed back and said he is out of touch with them, and I don't know why this isn't marked as red. Son of a bitch. There it is there, done. All right. Red. Let's get one more done here. Okay, that's got to get marked as red. Just read that. Excuse me. This one's titled Sasquatch. Hi Steve, stumbled upon a YouTube channel and have an experience to share. My mother were face to face with the Sasquatch. We were driving on Highway 2 on our way from Detroit Lakes, Minnesota, just outside Phasing, Minnesota. We saw a big brown hair object standing on 2 feet, just like us. It was looking in a window on a mobile home. It was about 7 feet tall and had his hands on the side of the trailer. We drove by saying, "What the hell?" We pulled over what I thought was a safe distance away. To my surprise, it wasn't. My mother and I were looking at each other in disbelief. My mother was 76 at the time. It was in the fall of 2010. Next thing, we see things moving in the grassy west land. We both say there is more than one. The next thing we know, he is alongside of the car. My mother said, "Look, he's right there." I turned and looked out the passenger window, and his face and my mom's face were face to face. The only thing between hers and his was the glass of the car window. She and I got the closest look at him, I truly believe. His nose was about 4 inches wide, and his mouth was pronounced outward, and about 7 inches to 8 inches wide, and the rest of his face was 2 feet wide, and his eyes were so dark brown that it looked like his eyes were all black, but they are not. His teeth are like ours, but large like a horse's, and his forehead sloped back and pointy. His skin on his face was black, and each eye was about 3 inches wide, and his nose and nostrils were the size of quarters. My mom said, "I will pray, and you drive and get us out of here." I put the car in drive and punched it, and the tires spit rocks as they spun on the gravel, 4-wheel drive. One tire was on the road, the other in the gravel. We went nowhere because he grabbed the car and pulled it sideways and lifted the rear of the vehicle. It was a 2-door, full-size Olds coupe. My mom asked God to tell, My mom asked God to tell this animal that we meant him no harm in silent prayer, and just at that moment, the Sasquatch let go and we drove away. As we drove, we watched him step from the ditch. He was 4 feet in the ditch. His next foot landed in the middle of the road, and the next was in the other side of the ditch, in the ditch. He entered the tree line and then turned to look at us as we drove away and disappeared. We drove around almost a mile, pulled over. When we then saw an old international pickup truck drive fast towards us. They had a shotgun in the front seat. A guy was driving, a girl in the middle, another guy in the passenger seat. They said, "We saw what happened. Are you okay?" We replied, "We are fine." They said, "This has happened before and something needs to be done." Not sure if anything can be done. All I know is it scared the shit out of us. Rolf Junot, Bloomington, Minnesota. Hope to hear from you. Can't go back. You're definitely in the club of no return, man. Without a doubt. What a frickin' way to enter it. No thanks. And I do know somebody personally who had one right on the other side of the glass looking in the window at her. Said the whole face filled the window. Teeth were like ours. But she said it had an expression on his face that it was just like rocking it out. It was entertaining itself. Now, excuse me, those 3 people that were in the truck, you know what the chances are that they are watching this channel? Probably right up there. So, you people in the truck, if you are watching this, and obviously you know exactly who you are from this share, why don't you email us what you know, what you've seen? That might help a lot of people, especially people in your community too, all right? And it may be valuable information. So, if you guys are out there and you hear this, get it in, all right? Or even at least comment in the comment section below under this video, whatever it takes. We want to hear from you. What an introduction. What a way to get into the club of no return. That's nasty. That's frickin' terrifying. Even though the actual, when you think about it, the actual act wasn't that violent. They just picked out the rear of the car and made you do a burnout, and that's about it. Meanwhile, it sounds like they could have just reached in and grabbed your ass by the neck and hauled you away if they felt like it, but they didn't, right? Frickin' bizarre, man. That's an experience I do not envy. Alright, I'm going to share one more because I've been sitting here for a while this morning and I got to get out and finish my fencing. This is titled, Sorry Steve. Steve, I recently sent you an email which you read on YouTube. Thank you for that. I'm the guy that got whacked across the head by a wrist-sized maple branch on my property while setting a mole trap. Note to you, share or not, you decide. I apologize for possibly offending you from a suggestion of fishing more perpendicular to the steelhead via the YouTube comments. My intent was only for information sharing. In Washington State, oftentimes steelhead are sparse in the rivers, and I have to take every advantage I can to hook a fish. Sometimes you can hook one steelhead for every 700 to 1,000 casts. I would be too cautious of that. I would too be cautious of that leaning tree. Oh, dude, please, me offended? Come on. No apology needed, alright? It's alright. Regarding Sasquatch roaring, I've never heard in the wilds any vocalizations that I have heard on videos supposedly done by Sasquatch, but I did have something happen to me while elk hunting on Bald Mountain on the east side of the Cascade Mountains, just to the north of Squaw Rock along Highway 410. I was rifle hunting elk. There's a particularly good honey hole that seemingly nobody knew about that the elk would retreat to during hunting season. It was a brushy, narrow, and steep creek bed. Late in the day, the wind was in my face. I was following about 12 elk up the creek and they were close to me, like 30 yards. I had a cow tag and at that time could shoot any bull. The brush was so thick we could not see each other. I could hear the cows talking. At one point, we all knew each other was there, but they had no idea what I was. I heard one of them pee in the snow/slush and decided to pee too. I made as much noise as they did, and a bull in the group roared at me so loud it actually hurt my ears. I got down on hands and knees, and that bull was looking at me. He was huge. He was no more than 20 yards from me, and I had no shot. If I was not aware of the elk, I would have thought it was a Sasquatch. Never got a shot that day, but got a huge cow the next morning. Cle Elum, Washington State has Sasquatch tree structures on the very top of the mountains to the south of I-90. 30 years ago, we bow hunted elk there. Good hunting, too. I saw these structures, but had no clue what they were until many years later. One day, my hunting partner and I were putting the squeeze on a group of elk. We had the wind on them, and we were separated and using cow calls. One of us is going to get a shot until we hear all this commotion coming our way from uphill drainage. What was odd is there was a heavy, big noise of something large and smaller noise closer to us. These were animals running right at us. Soon we see 3 mule deer does individually running at us. Their tongues were hanging out, all of them covered in wet mud and dripping in water. All of them were terrified. One of them was shaking with what I assume was fear. They stood close to us for about 30 seconds. We then hear 2 very large animals running at us from left and right. The deer scattered and the 2 large animals ran around us to the left and right. They all crashed away at pretty good speed. So much for our elk. I have no doubt 2 Sasquatch were chasing those 3 deer. That's when I had second thoughts about bow hunting. Even though I had a .357 mag on me, the heaviness of the noise and the quickness of them passing us was too ominous. I don't advocate killing Sasquatch, but if you have to defend yourself, always take a headshot with something like a 270 or 30-06. I'm positive a 357 mag with 154 grain flat lead point would work too. And never take a chest shot because many people have done so. And evidently, Sasquatch can absorb a lot of lead. Enjoy what you do, Steve. Dan Carroll. Okay, man, thanks for the email. Yeah. The steelhead thing, come on. It's nothing. Nothing. Getting back, so elk hunting. Elk, Dave Plias, I think, was one of the first people to point out to me that elk hunters are very, very much more likely to have experience of these things, these beings. Elk and Sasquatch go hand in hand. I posted up that herd of elk I filmed last week, all the cows in the riverbed, and just that same day I talked to a native guy who'd had around 4 or 5 experiences right there, right around that direct area where those elk are too. What else? A killing one. I wouldn't suggest pointing a gun and pulling the trigger at one of these beings ever, myself, unless it was absolutely apparent they're about to take something of importance from you, including your life or a family member or whatever, right? Obviously you gotta defend yourself, and that goes without saying with any species, not just them. I mean, it's a given. Defend yourself, right? You just don't be the aggressor, but be the defender when it comes to this shit. What else? I think that's about it for right now. I am read out. I gotta get stuff done. I got salmon I still haven't even chopped up from being away, and I gotta get that done or it's gonna be too late. I got fencing I gotta get done. Then I have to get editing I gotta get done. Right? What else could I do right now? Probably send a shout out to another avid pursuer of truth. Potentially what could be considered to be a high-profile individual in a way that basically every single one of you would be familiar with if it revealed who it was. But anyway, that person's on tour with a group of people we all know and love to listen to, and hope you guys are having a safe tour. And yeah, I throw that one out. We've been exchanging some emails back and forth recently. As more and more and more people get a hold of me from all wakes of life, is I guess what I'm trying to get to as well, making that mention. I got people emailing me from every group of individuals you can think of across the globe. We're getting information emailed to us from them. There you go. Oh, one more quick mention that I thought about the other day was, after speaking to more First Nations friends, what has come apparent to me is, although, you know, the David Politis is one of the first to point out publicly that, you know, native communities and the Sasquatch people, the experiences go hand in hand very commonly. And which would make you one think that they have a closer tie to the First Nations people. But if I look at it just from what people are detailing in their experiences, both native and non-native in North America that I speak to, the results are always exactly the same, which shows me blatantly that the Sasquatch doesn't give a shit who we are. We're human beings, and they treat us the exact same way across the board. From the hoots, the screams, the yells, the trees falling down, the rocks getting thrown at us, getting yelled at, chased out of the woods. It doesn't matter what color your skin is or what your race is. They don't give a shit. We don't get preferential treatment. We don't. It's everybody. We all get treated the same by them. Something we should probably all think about doing too, right? Anyway, that's all I got. I gotta go. Hopefully I'll be outdoors the next time I get a bunch of shit shared on here. And in the meantime, make sure you get it shared to me, to the people, through sharemystoryhowtohunt.com. And again, to all those who feel displeasure from what I do, what I say, how I carry about this channel, too bad. Hey, don't come here anymore. I'll be back later.